You're listening to your brain on air. The program will begin shortly. Enjoy. Kuuntelet aivojasi lähetyksessä. Ohjelma alkaa pian. Nauti.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Your Brain on Air. I am your host, Ollie Vogt Larson. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to think of new names for Cuba. Any ideas? I was thinking about Gulfstead. You know what I mean? Gulfstead, as in like it's in the Gulf. It's kind of near the Gulf, and then it's a stead. You know what I mean? A homestead in the Gulf. We can rename Havana, New Miami, Santiago de Cuba. I was thinking of renaming that Rubio de Cuba in honor of who will likely be the new president or prime minister, whatever leadership style we decide to put them under. Maybe a governor. You know what I mean? Folks, let's begin the talk of global expansion. Me and the Paul brothers are going to manage land developments from our tower in downtown Miami. We're going to have vacations in Palm Beach. We're going to snort poppers, get massages from the of age. All right, geez, let me and the Paul brothers boss up. We're going to be, chilling. Can you imagine me and Logan overlooking our new diamond mining operation in the Holguin province? You know what I mean? We clink some champagne glasses and crack the whip. We'll be barons of the Cuban rich minerals industry. I can't wait, ladies and gentlemen. And you should, honestly, maybe start looking into, moving, honestly. It's going to be either a territory or some level of a state. People are able to move to Puerto Rico if you're an American citizen. You know what I mean? It might be a similar situation in Cuba pretty soon. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I had to take a sip of coffee. I honestly cannot wait. I plan to be Jake Paul's Secretary of State. We've had a couple talks about it. We'll see where it goes. Ever since he got that endorsement from Donald Trump, it's just been an upward ascension for him, and I cannot wait for our diplomatic, historic disruption that we're going to throw in everybody's life when we become, I think it's 2032 we'll run? I don't know. We're figuring it out behind the scenes. We'll get back to you when we have a solid case. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about our first story. As per the usual, our first segment will be dedicated to the war that we are losing. This is one of the most embarrassing conflicts that we've gotten into. I would compare it to the likes of Vietnam. I'm not going to say that it is, we haven't lost as many people. I'm not saying it for that reason. I'm saying for embarrassment factor, for the fact that this is definitely not our full choice. There was no ballots, put out at any point on Facebook even saying how many of us would like to go to war with Iran. And even when you polled the majority of the public, not many people were willing to send their children to go die because they cared very much about Iran. Quite frankly, not many people understand that Iran is the Persians. Not many people know that. You know what I mean? I understand the defense of, people can't find this thing on a map is not a good defense. But in all honesty, the majority of Americans just did not give a shit about this area of the world. And now we are being forced to, because Bibi Netanyahu has encouraged us to ever since before I was born, quite literally. In the 90s, relatively, he started getting really vocal with it, showing up at our door, going, hey, nuclear-armed Iran. Eventually, we bombed them last year, which admittedly, I did support to some degree. I was like, hey, I want to see where it goes eventually, and I want to understand exactly what the plan is here. I didn't think that they had a plan. I didn't think that there was any further plan in the sense where it's like, they say that you didn't strike all the way down through their missile-proof bunker. So that's the parts that made me nervous, is like, if they really did have some of this technology that remains, and now we have given them a reason to be a little angry that we've scarred them, that's the part about it that I worried. The fact that we had destroyed their nuclear infrastructure had made me quite happy, though. Ladies and gentlemen, as per the usual with this administration, a lot of things are a mixed bag, a lot of things are flat out bad. So, we are going to cover some of that, actually, in today's first issue, our first story. Let's begin, go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to admit it. We are in a historic disruption of the global oil economy. The Strait of Hormuz is ungrabbable, and a path to victory remains unclear. Meanwhile, Cuba's entire power grid and energy infrastructure is collapsing like an African finding out that his son is gay. I would collapse, ladies and gentlemen. The global economy is bracing for a seismic shift this morning as energy markets are entering what analysts are calling a historic disruption. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway responsible for the passage of 1/5 of the world's oil supply, has become effectively ungrabbable due to its intense naval engagements of Operation Epic Fury with Iranian coastal batteries and swarms of fast attack craft, making the passage a gauntlet of fire. Insurance premiums for tankers have skyrocketed over 900%. Whoa. This has forced a complete halt to traffic through the chasm. I didn't mean to pronounce it like a douche. Chasm. God, why did I say it like that? Sending Brent crude prices screaming toward a record $135 a barrel. God damn. Meanwhile, I'm going to update you on a personal factor. I was heading down to get some gas today, and my goodness, we're looking at $3.39 a gallon. And that's the average. I drove around town a little bit to see if I could find anywhere cheaper, and that is it. $3.39. We are past the $3.09 marker. We've jumped 30 cents since the last time that I think I updated you guys. It's getting... Oof. I'm just gonna, we should start holding our breath a little bit. It's not cheap in Minnesota. It's not cheap in North Dakota. I don't know about anywhere else in the Midwest. I haven't been around lately. But ladies and gentlemen, despite the White House's insistence that the U.S. forces have achieved, quote, operational dominance, the path toward definitive military victory remains frustratingly unclear. While the initial strikes disseminated Iran's traditional command structure and the rise of Mojtaba Khamenei is ushered in, decentralized total war strategy, military experts warn that while the U.S. can win every head-on engagement, the asymmetric, not asymmetric, and doesn't have anything to do with the Jews. Well, it kind of does, Israel. Nature of the conflict, asymmetric, including drone swarms and cyber attacks, is creating a quagmire, not the Family Guy, with no clear exit strategy. The Pentagon's short-term excursion is now entering its third week with no signs of a ceasefire on the horizon. I watch 60 Minutes because I like it. I've always liked it. I used to watch it back in high school and shit like that. I used to watch it on my Chromebook, as they used to call it. You know, back in the day, we had these things called Chromebooks, and half the time they were not given to you. It was only in the later years where they let you take it home and shit like that. Especially during COVID, they had to let you take it home. But I had these things called Chromebooks, and I would open it up and I would play Dr. Phil. I would watch I'd play Friv, I'd watch Dr. Phil, God, that's a better way to say it, and all of those things, and I would just entertain myself. There was this one game where you could, create, a little world if you wanted, or you could, mix elements. It was, lava, water, or then you could, put sulfuric acid, you could put little people. It was, a little game. I can't remember what it was called, but I'd love to be reminded of what it was. But, I would play on my Chromebook, and I would watch 60 Minutes regularly, because even back then, I loved politics, because I got into politics right around the first election I remember being deeply kind of oh, this is interesting in, was Mitt Romney versus Obama. Now, to be fair, I was on surface level. I was on, the news side of it. I was not watching the epic rap battles of history, Mitt Romney v. Obama. If you haven't seen that, it's something else. It's bizarre. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Epic rap battles of history was never a lane I went down as a kid. It was never a serious... I've looked at some nowadays, and I'm like, the Smosh and Rhett and Link collab, that was alright. That was fine. As the Renaissance people, that was alright. That was a cool one. Then the Ninja Turtles side got cringe. And then I'm like, most of the videos just read to me as a peak internet millennials finding themselves hilarious, early 2010s humor. It's fine for the time, but I'm not trying to say hoity-toity this, whatever. I'm literally talking about YouTube comedy. We're not in a deeply serious lane of talk right now. But ladies and gentlemen, in between all of the 2010s stuff I consumed, I had a heavy trenching of news, you know what I mean? I was watching a lot about Mitt Romney's situation. A lot of people didn't like him for whatever reasons. I didn't like him because he was Mormon, quite frankly. That's just the truth. This was around the time I was 9-ish, so yeah, I was still Lutheran at the time. I was forced to go to Sunday school, all that bullshit and whatnot, and it's admittedly, it's fun to learn the stories because it does inform a lot about the world around us. Religion in and of itself can actually tell you a lot about the way people think. It can tell you a lot about a way that people, even like hundreds of years ago, saw things in the world and whatnot, the observations they made, and how it has rung true to many people throughout history. And some people have misinterpreted the message and used it in horrific ways. Some people have used it to like feed people that have less than them. You know what I mean? Dirty hobos that can't get a job. I'm just kidding. Haha. But that's real. I didn't like him because he was Mormon, but that's perfectly fine. And Barack Obama, I remember I voted for him in a school election. At the time, I believe I was in elementary school, and I voted in the school's little ballot for Barack Obama, and I felt really proud of myself. This was before a close, immediate family member of mine, I'm not going to say who it was to protect their privacy, but it's not anybody that I have talked to in a long bit of time, so I don't think they'll mind me sharing this story. But they were on the phone with, I believe, their boss at the time, and I had, I was at their shoulder, and I was talking about the news and whatnot. I was a little kid. I didn't understand very much, but I was just trying to talk to them about Barack Obama and how he was, going to get a second term. And this person looks at me, and he goes, Barack Obama wants everyone to burn in hell. And then he goes right back to his phone call. He put the phone to his chest, by the way. So there is definitely a chance that the boss had heard him say that. And then he just puts the phone right back to his ear and keeps talking. And then I go, okay. Yeah, he has a colorful view of this gentleman. And admittedly, you know what I mean? You can have your issues with Obama. I certainly admit that he is, I would say he is Bush light. He is a lighter version of the Bush era policies. He is a continuation of, underground prisons and things like that, Abu Ghraib type situations, drone attacks, and admittedly, policy. You know what I mean? We were sitting unpretty with Russia by the end. We were sitting unpretty with North Korea by the end. We were sitting unpretty with a lot of other nations around the world. It was not a great era of peace, you know what I mean? We encouraged a coup in Ukraine. We had a national director having a kill list made every Tuesday where they would go and kill foreign or domestic United States citizens that they considered to be threats to the country every single week, and they would meet every Tuesday. It was called the Tuesday Morning Kill List. John Brennan, I believe, was the person who threw it together during the Obama administration, and this was just a routine thing that Obama had made. It was discontinued eventually by Trump, and then this just was a routine practice. What I'm trying to say is that you can have your reasons for disliking Obama. I remember I liked him as a kid. But anyways, there's definitely things to criticize, as there is with every president. God, we're getting to Trump. God, that's the original point of this. Gas prices are ridiculous right now. We're gonna cover this 60 Minutes guy. He spoke up. Who is this guy again? I forget completely. Bob McNally, former White House energy advisor to the second Bush administration. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear exactly what he has to say.
The all-time high for the most consumers have ever paid for gasoline was in the summer of 2022 after Russia invaded Ukraine. It was a $5 per gallon average. If we don't open up Hormuz soon, I can see us making new records.
We could be looking at the highest gas prices ever paid in this country.
If we don't open Hormuz to the free flow of traffic, yes.
It's not just gas prices. The cost of jet and diesel fuel has risen 25%.
What I imagine.
As a result, higher plane tickets and grocery prices are expected to follow.
The gasoline we pay for at the pump, the price of that gasoline is set in a global oil market. A supply disruption anywhere leads to a price spike for consumers everywhere, including here.
We're seeing this trickle-down effect?
We are. So
$8, I believe someone saw in California. I thought I had a clip of it pulled, but maybe I will later. It was someone recording a gas station in, I believe it was just Northern California or something like that, somewhere outside of Oakland. I don't know. And they recorded $8, 20 something cents, I think. It was $8, maybe 2 cents. I maybe the numbers got switched in my head. I don't want to be a fake news reporter. So I could be wrong in that instance. People should research it, but I believe I know that it has climbed above $8 in certain areas.
When that mom in Des Moines goes to the store to buy food for her family, that food was grown with and transported by oil. And as those producers and growers of food react to and absorb these price increases, they'll be passed along to the consumer, to that mom in the store.
So what's happening at the Strait of Hormuz today affects the entire supply chain?
It does.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a no shit order. You know what I mean? It's of course, as the Middle East is burning, separate humanitarian crises are happening. Across the Gulf. We're going to cover that later, but I'm going to play you this one more clip of the 60 Minutes because this guy, he is predicting the worst case scenario. I would say the worst case scenario is 40% likely to happen. I'm saying 60% of a chance we still make it out of this lightly. You know what I mean? I'm saying that there's a chance that we make it. So you're saying there's a chance. I am. That we make it out of this unscathed. And by unscathed, I mean with maybe tens of Americans dead at the very minimum. You know what I mean? That's at the very... I'm just trying to be realistic here. We're already at a death count of over almost hitting 10. I'm just being honest here. We need to accept the fact that a lot more people are probably going to die before we get out of this. I don't think that is tolerable. I don't think it's okay, but it's something that we just have to remember as people talking about this seriously.
Give it to me straight. What is the worst case scenario that you are predicting here?
I'm predicting that this is going to get worse before it gets better. This is going to be a longer and costlier conflict than just about everybody expected.
You have said that a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz is a guaranteed global recession. Do you still stand by that?
Look, yes, the world economy cannot grow without 20% of its energy supply, period.
Rarely do we recognize history in the making. But is that what we are witnessing right now? We're sitting in the middle of an unprecedented time?
Yes, we are experiencing, just as a factual matter, the biggest energy disruption in history.
Man.
We have to just hope and pray that it doesn't go on for too much longer.
All right. If that's the best you got to inspire hope in us. If you're curious, I was curious about this as well. Why can't we just go in there and, as me and the Paul brothers would term it, boss up? Why can't we just do that? Why can't we go in there and just, kill everybody? And then take the Strait of Hormuz for ourselves? Well, Andrew Chang explains why that might be a little bit more difficult than we'd imagine.
Why can't the U.S. just take over the Strait of Hormuz? You'd think it would be relatively easy for the world's most powerful navy to conquer this tiny but critical waterway that's only 30-odd kilometers across at one point, so they can finally get Middle East oil flowing back out to the world again. But no, it's not that easy.
Attention all ships from now on. All navigating through the Strait of Hormuz is forbidden.
For starters, imagine putting an American warship directly in harm's way, right in the highly predictable, tightly confined kill box that is the Strait of Hormuz. Unlike in open water, it would be attackable not just by air and by sea, but also by land, where a rocket or missile strike could be launched from mere kilometers away. That might give any defender only seconds, not necessarily minutes, and certainly not hours to react. And what if the U.S. were to lose or sustain heavy damage to a warship in the Strait? Two problems. First, that's a multi-billion-dollar loss heaped on top of however many injuries and deaths for a country that has a very low tolerance for loss.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I have found that explanations lacking.
6 American families must now lay to rest their sons and daughters. And for what?
But also, let's say you lose any ship. An oil tanker is damaged or destroyed, loses propulsion somehow. How do you safely clear the lane? What good is a trade route that's also a war zone? And is it really feasible to protect thousands of ships a month? Because remember, all that oil is stuck on all those tankers, not because they can't pass through, it's because they don't want to. The risk of losing even one ship is too high, and insurance companies refuse to eat the potential loss of hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars if things go sideways.
Insurance companies have been really quickly scaling down the level of insurance they have, the kinds of insurance they have, and in some cases, the insurance policy.
So they, Los Angeles fired these people. They basically said, we're going to cancel your insurance early so that you can burn, and then we won't have to cover you, like a little bit, even a bit. We're going to cancel your policy because that just, it's better for us. And that's chill.
Entirely.
The problem the world has right now is that, as beaten and battered as Iran may be, according to the U.S. Secretary of War,
The mullahs are desperate and scrambling.
the fact of the matter is that Iran wouldn't need very many successes to put a complete stop to commercial shipping. It knows to be effective, it doesn't actually have to control the Strait. It just has to make it too dangerous for anyone else to use.
They just have to delay everybody. That's a great idea. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're also like me, you're worried about the fact that we're probably going to lose the dollar over this, and CNN seemingly is starting to agree with us.
The fate of the petrodollar. A senior Iranian official told CNN that Tehran is considering allowing some vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, with one caveat, that all transactions for cargo, that includes oil, are settled in Chinese yuan and not the US dollar. Such a move would circumvent the decades-old petrodollar used by oil-exporting countries to settle transactions. The petrodollar is a major reason why the US dollar is the world's reserve currency and also helps maintain dominance of the United States by creating more demand for US dollars. The petrodollar system dates back to 1974, when Saudi Arabia agreed to sell its oil in US dollars, helping stabilize the US economy after the Vietnam War and the end of the gold standard.
One of the worst mistakes we made as a country, ending the gold
Sanctioned
standard.
oil producers like Russia, Iran, and until recently Venezuela challenged the petrodollar, opting to use other currencies. Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, that normally handles around 20% of global oil and gas supply, has caused what the International Energy Agency says the largest disruption in the history of global oil markets. If Tehran moves forward with this plan, it could further weaponize one of the world's most critical energy choke points, not only militarily, but also financially, experts say. It's caused energy prices worldwide to skyrocket, and we've even seen prices of things like fertilizer, jet fuel, and polymers increase. But a new risk has emerged. Could the world be moving towards a petro-yuan? De-dollarization has been debated for years, with President Trump warning BRICS, the coalition of emerging nations, against abandoning the US dollar. If Iran continues to keep a tight grip on the Strait of Hormuz, would countries consider switching to trading in yuan, a currency of one of Iran's key allies? That could be consequential and could affect the fate of the petrodollar.
We're probably going to lose it. I'm in all honesty, unfortunately. I don't think we're going to be the standard bearer anymore. But, only time will tell if this is a unfortunate indicator for the future. As the Middle East burns, we're going to cover the Cuba international... the national power grid suffering a total collapse, leaving the island's 11 million residents in complete darkness. If you don't know, have been having rolling blackouts for a while. As a matter of fact, they've been having a lot of issues. They've been having so many troubles. There's TikTok videos that you can watch where a man, he cooks breakfast every morning, and he says, "Today I had power for 3 hours, and I had to cook this eggs and whatnot. And then it's hard to find eggs. You can actually barely find, because the grocery stores are not. The government is not reporting that there is a shortage of food and that there's no gas and that the cars, as a result, they can't drive anywhere and the streets are empty and there's garbage piling up everywhere." And he shows video footage. You can find it actually in areas that are unrestricted. It's the failure, if you don't know, has been triggered by the critical fuel shortage linked directly to the disruption of Venezuelan oil shipments. If you don't know about this, they have been relying on the oil shipments from Venezuela because, unfortunately for them, the Soviet Union's collapse left them in an absolute crisis. If you're old enough to remember, they had a situation where after their main oil supplier at the time and energy supplier in general, the USSR, collapsed, they were not able to rely on those shipments anymore. They had a situation. And then eventually, Hugo Chavez in Venezuela took power. And then he was like, "Hey, I'm going to foster relations to where we can be your supplier now. So we can keep your pseudo-communist experiment continuing," or whatever. That was the plan eventually from there. And then they have been rerouted, seized amidst the global chaos, with Antonio Gutierrez power plant offline and no immediate way to secure emergency shipments. Hospitals are now running on dwindling generator reserves, and the Cuban government has been forced to suspend all non-essential services indefinitely. Very not fun. Let's look at this video from Patrick Oppman, reporting from Havana.
The entire island of Cuba is in a blackout at the moment. It's the first time this has taken place since the Trump administration placed a total oil embargo on this island. And the concern is, although we've had island-wide blackouts in the past, is whether or not Cuba could get the power back on. What happens typically when you have a blackout in a province or in part of this island, they were able to essentially jumpstart those electrical grids using other electrical grids where they've not lost power. When you have an island-wide blackout like this, 10 million people in the dark at this moment, it gets much harder to do that. And on top of this, you have no oil coming into this island for the last 3 months, ever since the Trump administration began this pressure campaign trying to get Cuba to open up economically and politically. You're also dealing with a failing infrastructure, and an infrastructure the Cuban government has not invested in years, despite the fact that power outages have become more and more common. So already over the last few days, we were seeing blackouts that sometimes could last most of the day, an entire day. In one small town in eastern Cuba, people actually rose up.
Moron, yes. Moron? I don't know how to pronounce it. March 14th, they had a storming of the, what's it called?
That attacked the Communist Party headquarters.
There you go.
It's obviously something the Cuban government does not put up with here. And so people were arrested, people have been threatened for going out into the street and banging pots and pans, calling on their government to turn back on power. The government here blames the U.S., blames the Trump administration, but has said in recent days that they're willing to negotiate an end to this crisis. It's not clear if they have time to at the moment because the situation here gets worse and worse by the day. And increasingly, when you talk to Cubans, they say they feel they have nothing left to lose.
That is not a people that are going to be tolerating this for very much longer. This is actually a very, I caught this video and I want to share it with people because I believe that it explains things in a very succinct, stupendous way, that is just going to make things a lot clearer.
For 60 years, the Cuban regime has survived every crisis thrown at it. But this time, it might actually collapse. The island is running out of electricity, fuel, and food. And the regime may be entering the worst crisis since the revolution. Its people are starving, living off of 2 hours of electricity each day, and the Cuban economy is in shambles. 83% of the population now lives in serious abject poverty. The minimum wage is barely $15 per month. And that's not even enough to buy a carton of eggs. And the thing is, even finding a carton of eggs to buy is basically impossible. There are widespread shortages of basic foods, and the constant power outages leave the population with only 2 or 3 hours of electricity per day. Without electricity, there are no refrigerators or freezers, which means that there's no way to store food. Cubans are, and this is not an exaggeration, living in day-to-day survival mode. To make matters worse, there's almost no fuel left on the island. The streets are empty because there's no gasoline to fill up cars. Garbage is piling up in the streets, and public transportation has all but collapsed. In recent weeks, protests have begun appearing across the island, often at night during the blackouts, when people are banging pots and pans in the streets to demand electricity and food. In the city of Moron, protesters even attacked the Communist Party headquarters and set parts of the building on fire. By almost every account, this is the worst crisis the country has experienced since the Cuban regime came to power in 1959. Now, many of you may look at the misery in Cuba today and immediately assume that the explanation is obvious. The U.S. embargo. And there's no question that U.S. sanctions make things worse, but the truth is that the roots of the Cuba crisis go much deeper than that, because for decades, the Cuban economy has never truly sustained itself. Instead, it survived thanks to foreign patrons. During the Cold War, Cuba was sustained by the Soviet Union, which supplied the island with massive shipments of subsidized oil. In exchange, Cuba exported products like sugar and tobacco into the Soviet economic bloc. But when the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 1990s, those oil shipments suddenly stopped. The result was an acute economic crisis that became known as el periodo especial, or the special period. For almost a decade, Cuba struggled to survive. That is, until Hugo Chavez came to power in Venezuela. As you may know, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, and Chavez's close relationship to Fidel Castro led him to send hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil per day to Cuba, essentially for free. The oil kept the Cuban system alive. for the next 2 decades. But now that lifeline has disappeared, Nicolas Maduro is gone, and the oil shipments from Venezuela have stopped. For the first time in decades, Cuba is facing a crisis, and there's no foreign power willing to rescue it. And that's why the situation in Cuba today looks very different from the crises the regime has faced before. Because this time, there may be no one left to keep the system alive. But there's another factor that is making the situation dramatically worse. And it has to do with the new strategy that the United States under Donald Trump is now using in Latin America. You can go to my profile and watch part 2 if you're interested in understanding.
You can go to his profile. It is in the description, ladies and gentlemen. If you're Cuban, light fires. That is probably, like, I'm not saying to go protest and light fires. I'm saying light fires in your homes. And then, you know what I mean? Make sure that there's plenty of ventilation. But if you don't have heat, if you don't have all that sort of stuff, you got to go old school. You got to chop down trees. You got to do whatever it takes to keep the babies warm. You got to do whatever it takes. You got to, you know what I mean? I'm talking about the truth of survival here, ladies and gentlemen. You have to be willing to do some shit. You have to be willing to go out there and kill. What do you have? Deer down there? I think you do. You have deer type animals. You have maybe capybara. I'm just kidding. Maybe like rodent type animals. You can find those things. You have to go a little medieval when your country is struggling a little bit. It sucks and it's not very fun. But ladies and gentlemen, we can't cover it all, unfortunately. You know what I mean? We're gonna take a break from the real world. I mean, we're not. We're gonna talk about something else in the real world, but never mind, this isn't any lighter, actually, because it's just going to cover something that is affecting us directly at home right now. It's because of the partial government shutdown. Let's just jump right into it. Our second story, go. Airport delays kick in around spring break as the partial government shutdown worsens an already crowded time of year, folks. There is a lot of stress that's unfolding in airports. The perfect storm of spring break crowds and the partial government shutdown are creating a travel nightmare. If you don't know, as of Wednesday morning, major hubs like the Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta, and Houston Hobby are reporting security wait times that are exceeding 3 hours. The gridlock isn't just due to the seasonal surge of students and families. It's being fueled currently by the massive spike in TSA call-outs, with some airports seeing nearly 40% of their security staff staying home after missing their first full paychecks last week. The Department of Homeland Security issued a blunt warning Tuesday, stating that if these absentee rates continue, some smaller regional airports may have to shut down entirely to divert the remaining staff to major international hubs. In Philadelphia and Miami, several security checkpoints have already been shuttered, forcing thousands of travelers into single monstrous queues that wrap around the entirety of the terminal. This is wild. To make matters worse, recent severe storms across the East Coast have triggered over 1,100 cancellations, leaving travelers stranded in airports where food and services are already limited by the ongoing funding impasse. Let's play a little bit of this, ladies and gentlemen, because I always encourage people, don't do anything for spring break. What are you doing? That is actually the best time to be at your small town or your hometown or wherever you live, because everybody else is out doing something fun for spring break. You're the one who was smart enough to stay home. You have the Chinese buffet all to yourself.
And the situation at American airports has gone from bad to worse over the past 24 hours. Democrats are refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security unless Republicans agree to changes in immigration enforcement.
This is a pointless battle, I would like to mention, by the way. They're not going to change it anytime soon. The Democrats are holding it up for no good reason. This is not a hill to die on. You're making the situation with the war, the situation where our gas prices are already going up, and you're making the cancellations. All of this is getting worse because for some reason you think the Trump administration is ready to renegotiate the immigration style. It's not. No. It's not going to happen. It's not a hill worth dying on. Go. Continue.
But guess who's caught in the middle? 50,000 TSA officers working without pay amid a partial government shutdown, or not working at all. About 10% of them have been calling out in recent days. And that leaves more than 2 million airline passengers a day to deal with multi-hour security lines and heightened concern about the risk of terrorism.
Well, yeah.
Also late today, we learned that half the checkpoints at Philadelphia International Airport will be closed effective tomorrow, and that's not all. Senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve is all over this story for us.
Chris Van Cleve.
Chris, good evening. How bad could this get?
Tony,
it could become a situation where those 2+ hour lines become more common than not at airports across the country, and could get worse yet if an airport can't staff its checkpoints. That airport may have to close for the day. Flyers prepare for the airport to get a lot less fun this spring break. In Denver, it was a rocky morning.
This is nuts. I've never seen DIA like this.
At the Atlanta airport, another day of wait times topping 2 hours. Nearly 40% of the airport's TSA officers called out sick Monday, forcing a checkpoint to close.
If I didn't come 2 hours earlier, I'd miss my flight. Look at this line.
Look at this line.
3 of the TSA checkpoints at the Philadelphia airport will be closed. TSA sick calls are surging since officers missed a paycheck Friday due to the month-long partial government shutdown. Monday saw the most yet. More than 10% of officers nationwide called out. That's more than 5 times a normal day.
I don't even blame them.
Every single day, we have individuals sleeping in their cars, drawing blood to afford to pay for gas to get to work. So the situation financially is dire for officers. Acting Deputy TSA Administrator Adam Stahl. If the call rate does climb, there could be scenarios where we may have to shut down airports. This is a serious situation. It sounds like every day this goes on, you think it's going to get worse. Yes, the longer we do not receive funding from both the department and for TSA, this will get worse. This will not get better. Wait times are already increasing.
We're going to make our flight. We're thinking this is probably at least an hour's wait.
At Houston's Bush Airport today, the lines hit at least 103 minutes. 86 minutes in San Juan, and an hour at Chicago O'Hare. Now, it does not sound like airport closures are imminent. First, the TSA would look to reduce the number of open lanes and the number of open checkpoints, but particularly for smaller airports, that is a possibility. What can flyers do? Check your airport's website before you head to the airport. Most have up-to-date wait times, and then leave yourself some extra time when you get to the airport, Tony. All right, Chris, thank you very much.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that this is affecting Springbreakers, ladies and gentlemen. Springbreakers are, unfortunately, they are not the only ones that are feeling it. I understand a lot of people, they're like, I have to go see my mother. It's terminal. We don't know how long she's going to be there. Listen, that, quite frankly, does not stack up to the fact that these people need to have a cooler and some buddies on a beach. That is what they need to do. And let's actually jump into this section right now that I want to cover. It's a partial section of this, the flight stuff. I understand that there's not much we can do about it. So let's talk about the stuff that's more fun to talk about, like the fact that the Florida police are they're struggling with the Springbreakers. They, as we already covered yesterday, I believe it was, Daytona Beach. They had a situation where allegedly some gunshots were fired off. No one has proven yet if they were gunshots. It could have been someone popping a water bottle or something. It could have been, any of those sorts of things that are just loud and sudden, and it scared off a crowd and whatnot. And they have already made 133 arrests at Daytona Beach and New Smyrna Beach as the spring break begins, folks. If you're planning on going to Florida for your spring break, don't, because they are party shitters. They're not there for you to have a good time. And the sheriff, Mike Chitwood, this beautiful man with a big nose and a bigger mustache. He kind of looks like, who's the guy from The Ranch? He looks like him if he was bald, Sam Elliott. He looks like this guy, and he is here to lay down the law, you rowdy teenagers.
This weekend alone, we made 133 total arrests. 84 of them in Daytona Beach, 49 of them in New Smyrna Beach. What is concerning is we seized 6 weapons.
Oof.
2 of them were on an adult, one adult carrying 2 guns, and a juvenile who had possession of a stolen firearm.
Whoa.
But what's more disheartening, and people need to understand, is everybody can carry a gun in Florida.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the color of your skin.
You can be strapped up.
It matters your age. But you know what? There's a lot of people out there, and the chief counted over 20 encounters where we may have stopped somebody for an open container who was an adult who said to us, I want to let you know I got my gun in my backpack. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can carry your gun concealed. They can carry a weapon open carry. So it's a new generation in dealing with spring break. If they're legal to possess a firearm, they can carry it concealed or they can carry it open. And that's what we had out there. There were a lot of people armed with guns on top of the bad guys armed with guns.
On top of the bad guys armed with guns. On top of the bad guys armed with guns. But ladies and gentlemen, if you plan on doing one of these little get-togethers again where you and your buddies, you know, you and your nondescript buddies, you get together and you decide to, you know, have a little rave. You decide to have a little powwow. Not a powwow. I'm not going to make this racial. And it's not Native Americans doing this stuff. It really isn't. I didn't see one of them at this entire get-together, and I analyzed this crowd like Tony Stark analyzing footage to figure out where, like, the villain is. You know what I mean? I was going deep on this footage, and, you know, it's a bunch of rowdy folk. That is one way that you can put it. And Sheriff, he also has warned you, we're coming for you. If you try to do anything like this, again, we're coming after you financially. He warns you, we're coming after you financially. I haven't been able to figure out how we can come after you legally yet for some reason, even though you're organizing a event that it has no permits, has no legal tenure to stand where it's going to be or to be held where it is. And for some reason, that's not illegal to the point that they can prosecute you legally, criminally. He goes like, well, I'll figure out how to do criminally later, but we're coming after you financially. This is a warning directly from Sheriff Mike Chitwood. I love his name. Chitwood, please, take it away. Fox News Orlando, take it away, please.
This goes to every promoter. You promote a truck event, you promote a takeover event, we are coming after you financially. So we're going to be the first county, and my attorneys are working on it now, probably going to be the first county in the state where you're going to see we are coming after you financially.
Coming after you.
Coming after you criminally. So don't sit behind a keyboard in Georgia or Orlando
Georgie.
or wherever and think you're going to do these truck events or these takeover events, because it's not going to happen. There's a way to do business. Get permits.
Do
things the right way.
Do things the right way. That's a warning to every single one of you bitches. If you plan on having a fun time at the beach, don't even try on my watch. If it's over 30 people, you're getting shot on the beach by Sheriff Mike Chitwood, ladies and gentlemen. This is a joke. This is a satirical show. I know that in Florida, they'll come knock on your door if you post something that's like too much of a joke for them. If it's too much of a joke for them, they'll be like, hey, we're part of the blah, 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 police department. We are a little concerned about some posts that you made on Instagram that may be considered ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna move past Chitwood. I love Mr. Chitwood. He and I are great friends. We call each other on the regular, you know what I mean? And I cannot wait for our next meeting so that he can justify this behavior to me. I cannot understand why he's doing this. He's going after the Springbreakers. You cannot go after the only solid base of economy, except for maybe the crypto bros, a lot of the energy that Los Angeles had back in the early 2010s. It's kind of shifted now over to Miami. It's very much the scene now, you know what I mean? Even movies are getting made there. Georgia is a hot spot for movie making. The East Coast is kind of popping off right now. The West Coast is getting a little bit left in the dust when it comes to advancements, but whatever, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot take away the base of Florida, which is, grimy teens that want to go and they want to drink illegally. He's like, no, we're going to ruin everybody's good time. If you come to Florida expecting that you're going to be able to do something Florida-like, damn you, and I will get you off of my streets, ladies and gentlemen. Folks, let's cover the rapid-fire section of today's headlines. A lot of stuff that is in the news cycle you got to know about. Keep your media diet healthy. We're going to cover it and talk about it, like the facts that there is apparently evidence coming out now that medical cannabis does, quote, more harm than good to mental health in certain conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, this sounds like straight propaganda. According to ITV News, medical cannabis, which includes products with THC or CBD, may be doing more harm than good for people with mental health conditions. A major review has found international researchers have carried out the most comprehensive analysis to date, looking at how cannabis-based therapies affect conditions like anxiety, PTSD, and depression. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think smacking the pen is helping your anxiety, if you think that it is taking you to a lighter place in this world, Apparently, according to these researchers, you are an anomaly. Like, admittedly, they admit that there are some folks that maybe these products work for. Maybe it reduces their anxiety. Maybe it does whatever. And they say that some people are affected by it more than others. I think this is a way to get people off of weed and on alk. Ladies and gentlemen, they're like, hey, alcohol's the demon you know. Why not just poison your liver for the rest of your life instead of smoking weed and questioning things? This feels like straight propaganda. ITV News, take it away.
Medicinal cannabis could be doing more harm than good for
More
people
harm
with
than
mental health
good.
conditions, a major review has found.
Major review.
International researchers have carried out the most comprehensive analysis to date, looking at how cannabis-based therapies affect conditions like anxiety, PTSD, and depression. Medicinal cannabis includes products with CBD or THC. Despite more people than ever turning to the drug, the study published in the Lancet Psychiatry found little evidence it actually works for most common mental health disorders. The research team analysed 54...
It's not the only cure, my guy. Dude, marijuana's not the only thing that... Like, yeah, sure, if you're not working on yourself, if you're not going to therapy, if you're not doing... Well, not even to say that I fully believe in therapy, but if you're not trying to work on bettering yourself, if you're not trying to work on living more mindfully, living in a better state, purer state of mind, you know what I mean? Then weed is not the only thing that's going to get you there. You cannot just rely on a plant. This is, I understand people are going to go, well, maybe this is just a sign that the plant, it diminishes your ability to get there. Maybe it's the fact that people who are using this plant believe that using this plant is the only step. Then I would argue that this is a misuse, this is a misapplication of the substance, as I believe that this substance should be accompanied with better life choices. It should be good, but I understand not many people are going to do that. Not many people are capable of it, especially on weed. Not many people operate the same way. Continue.
Trials and say there was no significant positive effects for anxiety, ADHD, or psychotic disorders.
Or psychotic disorders.
No evidence.
Well, yeah, if you're psychotic, you shouldn't be smoking the dope. If you're schizophrenic and you already have so much like chaos going on and you already have so much blah 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 blah, I don't know that encouraging or introducing a little more chaos into the way that your brain operates is a great idea. I think that actually it's not a good idea at all.
The tool for depression. While the review suggests that medical cannabis might be able to help with sleep or Tourette syndrome, experts warn that the evidence is still low quality. Medicinal cannabis. We're gonna lie a bunch, and we're just gonna create bullshit, ladies and gentlemen. Let's cover, how about this, a lighter moment. We're gonna take it off this topic because this is too damn serious. A police officer plays a criminal's VR headset mid-arrest. This man is living on cloud 9, and I really like his energy.
This is the shocking moment of...
He looks like he's playing like the Beat Saber or the Fruit Ninja game.
This is the shocking moment a police officer was caught playing on a criminal's VR set, whilst his colleagues carried out the proper job of arresting him. During the arrest, which took place
Shocking
in a cafe in
moment.
St. Petersburg, the officer was seen trying on the VR goggles and picking up the sensors before playing the game. The suspect was detained due to allegedly avoiding military conscription in his home country of Belarus. It is unclear whether the officer will face any disciplinary proceedings.
Why would he face any disciplinary proceedings? That's hilarious and funny. Leave him be. Joseph Foreman. Does anybody know Joseph Foreman, known professionally as Afroman? Well, he is heading to trial this week in a lawsuit filed by Adams County Sheriff's deputies who claim that he used their likenesses without permission. Foreman's defense say that the case is about freedom of speech. The first day of the trial is focused on some of Foreman's social media posts following August 21st, 2022. The raid on Foreman's home. He captured the raid on security cameras around his home and used the footage in a music video for his song Lemon Pound Cake, which went viral. Footage he posted for his Instagram page showed multiple officers breaking down the door and entering with long rifles drawn. I was never a big fan of Afroman. I thought his song was dumb. The Because I Got High song always bothered me. And as somebody who partook, unfortunately, in the herb, people would always put that song on and think they're being cool or think that they're like, we should smoke to fucking we should smoke to Afroman, man, because it's like Because I Got High. It was the most it's like people who listen to like Cypress Hill's Hits from the Bong unironically when when they start. I'm sorry, maybe mid-smoke session I can tolerate it, not... If you like started off with that shit, I'm sorry, it's cringe, it's overplayed, it's stereotype, you know what I mean? You have to have a little bit of personality. I got into it recently because of a suggestion of yacht rock, yacht music. Listen, when you put on like Baby Come Back, you put on Heart to Heart by Kenny Loggins, if you put on, is it Loggins or I think it's Loggins, not Loggins. I think it's Loggins. I don't know. It's pronounced either way in my mind. But Ride Like the Wind, Christopher Cross. Oh my God. FM, Steely Dan, I Keep Forgetting, by Michael McDonald. Oh my God. Sailing by Christopher Cross. There is just so many good songs that'll just take you away to a greater place, especially when you're smoking. So much better than this lazy, I hate the vibe, I hate the aesthetic, it's so gross, stoner. There is intellectual, mindful, worldly stoner, and there is gross, sitting, doing nothing, rotting, food all over your shirt. There is two different types of smoker, and I personally like to identify with a more cultured class than this type.
This morning, Grammy-nominated rapper Afroman, whose real name is Joseph Foreman, is on trial. Accused of using footage from
by the way, just making this song, he should go to jail.
Police raid in one of his music videos without permission. Back in 2022, deputies in Adams County, Ohio, raided the rapper's home on suspicion of drug trafficking and kidnapping, but no charges were brought. Foreman made a song about it and used his home security footage in the music video.
It made the sheriff wanna put down his gun and cut him a slice. Of what?
The song went viral, as did a follow-up song.
Will you help me repair my game?
Foreman says he made the video and later sold merchandise to pay for damage to his home after the raid.
All of this is their fault. If they hadn't wrong,
I love him turning up in an all-American suit with American shades. It's American flags all over his suit. I put this in the description if you want to look at it. It's beautiful. It looks amazing.
Raided my house, there would be no lawsuit. They wouldn't be on my home surveillance system, and there would be no songs.
The deputies sued, claiming the rapper used their likeness without permission. And they say publicity from the video and lyrics mocking the deputies led to humiliation, ridicule, mental distress, embarrassment, and loss of reputation.
No way.
Have the public send you death threats over lies is distressing.
We get 300 calls a day threatening to kill us.
I didn't want any of that lemon cake.
Somebody's buying into it.
Foreman says he was simply exercising his First Amendment rights.
Yes, I have freedom of speech. I'm a rapper. I entertain.
I see absolutely no reason that he should go to jail for this, but except for his crimes against stoner music, for ruining it in the minds of so many people, I would like to see him in jail for that. I think that was criminal, but ladies and gentlemen, whatever. We can move past that. Unfortunately, I will not be able to move past this, learning about... First of all, I watched the Shit Cruise documentary on Netflix. It was rather gross, and it disturbed me to my core. Not only did I hated the idea of going on a cruise beforehand, because I hated the idea of being on the open water, quite frankly. It bothers me as a concept. It doesn't make sense to me that something the size of a skyscraper floats around the ocean, and we're just fine with that. We sleep on it. I hate it. Some people gamble on it. I'm okay with, riverboats. Riverboats are cool, and I can swim to the riverbank, you know what I mean, before I'm sucked down by the you know what I mean, the circular motion in the water that is created by the boat going under. I know that I'd be able to avoid a riverboat sinking. You know what I mean? They used to gamble on those going down the Mississippi River and shit. Anyways, this is a niche reference. Anyways, what were we talking about? Anyways, yes, I don't like the idea of cruises, even more because of this recent story about more than 150 people on the Princess cruise ship getting infected with norovirus. How delicioso. What was the dish?
More than 150 people on board a Princess cruise ship got sick with norovirus last week. The Star Princess was on a one-week voyage in the Caribbean. According to the CDC, more than 100 passengers and nearly 50 crew members got sick. The ship returned to Fort Lauderdale this weekend, where it underwent additional rounds of cleaning before embarking on a new voyage.
Before embarking on a new voyage. I feel clean listening to that. One final story before we get into our last story, and I will release you to whatever it is your Friday will be consumed by. The New York skyline could soon be getting a lot darker if a bill is passed in Albany. Very, very interesting. This would require many outdoor lights to be turned off between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. This would affect residential, commercial, industrial, and municipal buildings in the state. Let's hear a little bit about it from ABC7 New York City.
The New York City skyline could soon be getting a little darker if a new bill is passed in Albany. This bill would require many outdoor lights be turned off between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. So this would affect residential, commercial, industrial, and municipal buildings in the state. There are some exemptions like street lights and holiday decorations, but right now the bill is just in the first stages.
I doubt that it's going to pass, but we'll see. Given the fun things that they're passing in New York City, which is going to be our final story, they might pass it. Ooh. I had a sneeze. Excuse me. There we go. I got it all out. We're fine. Ladies and gentlemen, our final story has a lot to do with the city and state of New York. I cannot wait to cover it. Mamdanistan is where we're heading for our next story. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. Mamdanistan. New York City is becoming a paradise. 20 miles per hour speeding limits citywide, 9.5% tax hikes on all residents. And it's only getting better, ladies and gentlemen. New York City is entering a transformative, highly controversial new era under the administration of Mayor Zoran Mamdani. I cannot wait. If you've seen on TikTok at any point, it's been dubbed Mamdanistan, New York City. Mamdanistan by both fervent supporters and vocal critics. The city is undergoing a radical social and fiscal overhaul aimed at creating a pedestrian paradise. The centerpiece of this urban redesigning is an immediate implementation of a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on all city streets. As though you thought traffic moved any slower, you thought that it was a crawl to get around the city right now with the traffic, all this garbage. City Hall is arguing that Sammy's Law the expansion will drastically reduce traffic fatalities, but the move has already sparked a massive backlash from delivery drivers and outer borough commuters who say the change has turned the city's gridlock into a permanent standstill. Let's play, just so that you guys don't think I'm goofing, I'm lying when I tell you this. Here's the Mayor Mamdani saying that he supports it himself. And if you don't believe, if you think that I'm playing AI or whatever, go to the description and watch it for yourself.
It is a goal of our administration to lower the speed limit across the city to 20 miles an hour. That, however, is something that can only be done with a local law change to the city administrative code. And we do support the city council taking those efforts.
They support the city council taking those efforts. That he couldn't make it any clearer to you. Ladies and gentlemen, to fund this vision of a greener, safer metropolis, I love the term metropolis. New Yorkers are facing a staggering 9.5 across-the-board tax hike. Mayor Mamdani is defending the increase during the heated press conference Monday, calling it a social solidarity levy, not the Dan or the Eugene levy, but a necessary one to close the multi-billion-dollar budget gap and expand the city's social safety net. The tax hike comes at a precarious time for the local economy, as the small businesses are already struggling with inflation and high commercial rents that warn that this additional burden could trigger a mass exodus of the middle class to the suburbs or lower tax states. Smart of them. The atmosphere in the city is one of deep polarization, while the progressive side is advocating and hailing hailing the new policies as a blueprint for future urban living. The Mamdanistan moniker has already become a rallying cry for those who feel the city is becoming unaffordable and overregulated, as though it wasn't already. As the Department of Finance begins mailing out the new tax assessments this week, all eyes are on the city council, with several members already facing intense pressure from the constituents to find a middle ground before the next fiscal quarter begins. For now, New Yorkers are bracing for a slower pace of life and significantly lighter wallets. Here is Levy Broker Law to break down the situation a little bit more in legal terms for
The
us.
greatest city in the world, New York City, is doing everything it can to make it more difficult to live here. Beginning in February of 2026, if you are speeding even 1 mile past the speed limit, meaning you're going 51 as opposed to 50 on a highway, now that violation has increased from 3 points to 4 points. Using a cell phone while driving used to carry a violation of 5 points. That's now going to be 6 points. Driving with a broken taillight now carries a violation of 1 point, where before it was just a ticket. The benchmark for having your license suspended used to be getting 11 points in a period of 18 months. Now it's 10 points in 24 months. What does that mean? That means these innocent violations will add up very, very quickly, and your license can be suspended much, much quicker. Not only that, the amount of money that you have to pay for these violations are all increasing and going up. Now, New York City will say, well, we're doing this to promote safety in driving, but we know what they're really doing. It's not about safety. It's about revenue raising. Think about it. In New York, you can't park where you want, you can't drive where you want, you can't eat what you want, you can't drink where you want, you can't carry a gun where you want. Everything is restricted in New York. They make it as difficult as possible to live here. Why do they do that? Because you keep paying taxes, you keep living here, you keep paying their rent, and they don't care about you. Because it's one thing if they take your money and they use it well to give you a better life. But we saw what happened in the last snowstorm. They can't even clean your streets of snow, and they want to keep raising your rents to do what? To give it to migrants? To give it to people who don't even pay taxes here? All they're doing is punishing taxpayers, and that's why more and more people are leaving the city. And unless things change, that trend isn't going anywhere.
I would agree to some extent. I think a lot of people are going to stay. I think a lot of people are going to be fans of this, quite frankly, because it's going to... I know that many people believe that socialism is something that many generations are going to... You have to burn your hand on the stove, as many people say, before you learn to avoid doing such behaviors. It's only up to you to learn where the boundaries of your skin is. That is a good way to phrase it, but I think that some people... As much as we like to say people hate communism once they get it, I think a lot of people will enjoy the standard of living that is already brought to them, because New York City is already not high when it comes to the standard of living. I think many people will say that this is noticeably a little bit different. Sure, I used to live in a rent-controlled apartment. I used to live in section whatever housing. My landlord was a piece of shit, and then eventually he had to literally close out the property because he couldn't afford the property taxes. And eventually that was bought out by some billionaire, and then he hiked it up because that's the only way that he can afford to stay in the city, because we have this certain level of tax. We base it on the income of the individual. We have all these rules and whatnot, so he hikes it up so that he can justify staying in the city and investing on whatever 8th Street, you know what I mean, 46th, 58th, I don't know. And people are just going to have a situation where they go, well, now my old apartment building is a series of Airbnbs, and I am now living in a not a cardboard box. I would say it's more like a... You know when they're able to find, the stoop area where it leads down to someone else's apartment? It's like the area where you go to open another door and it's someone else's house. They're going to start sleeping in the stoop areas because it's blocked from the wind, you know what I mean? There's going to be businesses in all those stoop areas, and they're going to find homeless people just hiding from the wind, and that'll be an unfortunate vision that'll be coming to fruition. I don't know how soon. I'm praying for your sakes that it's not going to be anytime soon, ladies and gentlemen, but I actually, you know what? I think I'm going to call it on my predictions for New York City. I'm going to give them a break because I understand they're going through unprecedented times. And we'll just see where it shakes out, ladies and gentlemen. But I will be here to cover it whenever it does. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to today's episode. I had a wonderful time gathering these stories for you. I hope you had an even more wonderful time listening to them. And I cannot wait to cover the rest of this week. We have, Thursday and, Thursday, Friday. And then we are just, that's it. We're just chilling. And then we're going to take the weekend off as we usually do. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, join us on our next broadcast if you'd like. Subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, like if you liked it. And that's about it for me. I hope that you have a a wonderful rest of whatever you call your Wednesday. And did I call today Friday earlier today? I'm pretty sure I did. Well, I hope that you enjoy whatever this day has in store for you, whatever day you might be listening to this even. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful rest of whatever today is. And I've been Ollie Vogt Larson with your Brain on Air. Thank you so very much for listening, and bye-bye.